Welcome to The Woolly Way, a podcast specifically for dairy shepherds. That is, folks wanting to raise sheep for the purpose of harvesting milk. We cover all the things pertaining to raising dairy sheep here, be it animal nutrition, housing, healthcare, lambing tips, cheese making, and even some butchery and fiber arts. After all, if you raise dairy sheep, you are going to have wool, and if your operation is successful, you'll eventually have surplus lambs to decide what to do with. Ethical animal husbandry is the focus here, as well as sustainable agriculture. We want to provide you with the information you need to start and continue your dairy sheep operation in the best way possible for you, your sheep, and this amazing world we live in. So grab a nice cup of sheep milk and let's dive in.
You have to embrace your orneriness or the sheep will beat you up. Like, you have to
for sure.
your individual, that was the biggest learning curve for me as both a beekeeper and a shepherd. Is I kept wanting to go to someone else to tell me what to do in the moment, and I had to trust my gut. I had to trust my intuition. I had to really embrace that these were my sheep, these were my bees. I knew them better than anyone else, and if my gut was saying give them an extra, shot of cayenne pepper or whatever, it didn't matter if the books backed it up or not. I needed to do that. I had good results with it. And, then after the fact, I'm starting to learn things like, cayenne is actually anti-parasitic and it seals the gut and it has all these, again, unknown health things that sheep really thrive with. But if I talk to people about it, the other people were like, oh, no, that's not what you do. You go and get Cytectin. That's what you do. And so I think, that's one thing that
happens to me when I went to the feed store. I was dealing with Go ahead. Sorry, I was talking about it.
There's a little bit of a lag. But I think that's one thing that also can help with our healing is, people with chronic illness typically have been undercut and gaslit and really don't trust themselves. And I mean, I hear so many stories of people who have these undiagnosable, horrible things. And when they take that leap of, this is weird and everyone's against me doing this, but darn it, I'm doing it anyway, they start to have that cascade of health. And, there's nothing more weird at this point than saying, I'm going to milk a sheep and drink its milk raw. And then I'm going to take
totally, yeah. Like, I looked at my ENT when he told me about all of this.
Yeah.
He told me about all these things that I was like looking at, and I was like, what are my options? And he was like, what do you mean? What are your options? And I was like, what are my options? Like, what else can I do besides all of these surgeries? And he was like, oh, nothing. And I was like, so this is the only option then. And he was like, if you want to have a chance of having your voice back, this is your option. Wow. And so a lot of people, and I'm someone who's so stubborn and was raised by a very independent, strong-willed woman and grandmother as well, who were like, you don't take shit from no man if it doesn't feel right in your heart. And so I looked at him and I was like, you're telling me it's your way or the highway? Like, I'm going to go buy a sheep. And so you have to sometimes be a little bit crazy. And when I told my husband this, he was like, your medical plan is to buy a sheep. And I was like, no, multiple sheep. And he was like,
a flock.
All right. Let's see how this goes.
and now I'm not sure what to call this podcast episode, because I was going to call it like fat dragons and sheep mulch, but now I'm like, sheep as a medical plan. I don't know. Like, what's the title?
Well, I mean, isn't that kind of a funny thing, right? Like, our farm is an apothecary. The whole primary goal of our farm is to show people that they can take charge of their own health, right? Like, you can grow your own cough syrup. You can grow your own sleep aid. You can grow your own anxiety medicine. There's all these wonderful things that, we can grow ourselves and help us in so many ways. And then, sheep, just like I said, they just all they fold right into that, because they're just one more aspect of a holistic lifestyle and a holistic approach to body wellness. Like, our bodies want to function well. I firmly believe that our bodies want to function well. And if we give them the support and the pathways to do that, they will. And it's just about finding what works best for you. Like, I have figured out over 45 long years after being in the health and fitness industry that my body thrives on a high fat diet, a super high fat diet. I'm talking like over 50% of the food that I consume would be considered high fat. And my weight has never been better. My overall health has never been better. My blood work has never been better. And I firmly attribute, sheep just being one more aspect of that apothecary, right? Like not just sipping chamomile tea, but the whole life. And I'm not saying that in order to be healthy, you have to have a flock of sheep, right? Like that's just not realistic.
You may not, I will, but
what I've learned, yeah. I mean, I will encourage anybody to get a flock of sheep. That is for sure. I will absolutely. Like, you've got a backyard, get a Shetland. They're 45 pounds. Get 2 of them. People think they're fuzzy corgis.
There's a country called like Alaska.
Everybody.
And they're like the size of small dogs. Get a couple. You'll be fine. So
yeah, literally, there are options for everybody to have sheep for sure. So I'll always encourage that. But what I'm saying is, like, I want people to see that, like, the lifestyle that I'm leading here on the farm isn't, you don't have to have a farm necessarily to lead that. You just have to start coming up with what works best for you. If that's, figuring out that eating a low-fat vegan diet, your body's not thriving well on it, try something else. Or if this medicine that you're taking makes you feel like crap, see if there's another thing that can support your body. I'm not saying to get off your medication, please, but see if there's a way that you can support your body so that medication doesn't have to work so hard. And like, there's just so many things that we can proactively do for our own health and wellness. And sheep have just shown me, at least for my life, they are the absolute cornerstone of that.
Yeah.
And I love it. And I'll always have that.
Yeah. And I think, humans and sheep have been in a close relationship for so long. I mean, the evidence now archaeologically.
The dawn of time.
Yeah. I mean, the archaeological evidence is that, the first domesticated animals were actually sheep. Like, they retested the milk residue on the pottery shards in the oldest Neolithic campground, and the milk residue seems to be sheep milk at this point. So I mean, the evidence is there. That's awesome. The sheep were the first things that we went to, and then like, sheep intestines have been used for sutures, which, sorry if that grosses anyone out, but if you're going to be a shepherd, embrace the gross, because it's just part of your life now. So
no, sheep are not reactive. Sheep are hypoallergenic. That's what's so amazing. Like with pigs and cows, like, there are a lot of zoonotic diseases, and I have actually a degree in biology, but there's a lot of crossover in, the equine world, the bovine world, and the porcine world that there's just not in the sheep world. And so, sheep have been used in humanity for so long because they just have so many benefits. Like you said, sheep intestines for suture material, and sheep stomachs for backpacks, and, like wool pack, like clothing. The thing that we wear on our largest organ, has been wool. And when you wear wool, it's like there are studies that have been done that your body vibrates at a higher, better frequency when you're wearing wool. The energetic properties of wool resonate with our human energies so similarly. And it's like, I'm in I told you this before we logged on, but I'm in our construction site. My husband and I are rebuilding an old farmhouse, and there's no heat in it. And it is currently -9 outside. It is, I can see my breath. So we know that it's in the 30s in this room. I'm wearing a 100% wool flannel and a 100% Shetland wool sweater. And I couldn't be warmer.
That's amazing.
Are you kidding me? Like, I'm sitting still in a chair for 2 hours, and I'm wearing wool pants, 2 wool shirts, and I'm completely comfortable. Like, there's just there's just nothing that
like with
compares. Sorry, that's all I was going
to say. So like with the TV show Outlander, that is breaking my heart because it's ending soon, and I'm not happy about it. But when they first started filming, the crew was wearing all of these like state-of-the-art synthetic coats and layers and all this
Like-
kind of stuff. They were filming in the Highlands of Scotland, I think in the wintertime. So it was cold and damp. Like hypothermia was a real risk. And for whatever reason, they got
And
a
Gore-Tex doesn't keep you warm. I'm sorry.
no, well, the costume designer, for whatever reason, was like, we're doing this authentic. So she made all of the casts costumes from the actual materials they were supposed to be from. So she had linen undershirts.
Oh, they really were like linen and flax and wool and like authentic costuming.
Like,
That's
they were
amazing. I had no idea.
And like she actually got like the term is walking to felt the plaids for the tartans for like the kilts and stuff. So she actually got the right type of material to make the plaids. And eventually like the cast would go to the actors and stuff were saying, can we have more of those wool accessories and stuff? Because they're actually keeping us warmer than our modern day clothing. And so like,
yeah, like they're going to get more wool blankets instead of putting on a parka. Like, absolutely.
So that's why in the first
just
season,
like-
they show those like earless gloves and chunky knits and that kind of stuff, because the set designer had to like quick get knits and woolens to throw onto them to keep them warm, so they were still in period clothing. And that just like,
I love
when
it.
I found that out, that just made me so happy. I know some of our listeners are like, oh my gosh, you dirty heathen, you watch Outlander. Yes, I do. Leave me alone.
Dirty heathen. Please. If they stuck around after the Fantasy Ren Fair intro, then
Well,
I think we filtered out all of the non-Outlander lovers.
That's your point. Yes, that's true. The books are better, but I do love the TV show. Okay. So anyway, yes, wool is where it's at. Now, before we go, so now what have you done with your wool? Because you have East Frisians, and the East Frisian wool is notorious for not being the best quality and stuff. I love it. I think it makes the best socks and outdoor wear. Like if you want homestead wool, East Frisian is the way to go. But because you're not a fiber artist yet, because I am
not in any way a fiber artist, but I am standing up really quickly because I do need to show you. I'm wearing East Frisian socks.
I love it. If you're listening to the audio, I'm sorry, but she stuck her foot up at the camera and she's got these beautiful white socks on that are clearly wool.
So yeah, I am currently in East Frisian socks. They are not my East Frisians, unfortunately. These were purchased from another fiber artist who works with East Frisian wool.
It's okay.
But wool is one of those things, like, it doesn't just have to be turned into a sweater, like, and sheep are such a versatile animal. We talk about that all the time. But wool itself as a material is just the most insanely versatile fiber, like blows me away. And that has been all new for me just in the last 2 years of raising sheep, like learning the miracles of wool and the versatility of wool, especially in the garden. There's just so much. I mean, so yeah, I own a set of carding paddles. Is that what they're called? Cards? I own those.
Carders. Yeah.
Oh, carders. I own a set of those.
A lot of the tools. I have no idea what they're called or what the proper terms are. Like, if you're a diehard fiber artist, I apologize, because I'm like the carder thing.
Oh, I'm here, or this is full disclosure. So yeah, like, I own multiple sets of knitting needles. I own crochet hooks. I own lots of yarn, and I'm just not good at it. I enjoy it. I enjoy it a lot. I have made one successful item. I made my nephew's baby blanket when he came home. My sister adopted him, and when he came home at 8 months old, I made a baby blanket. But I mean, let's be honest, it was a square. So
you guys
it wasn't that difficult, but that was really it. So I knew, not being a fiber artist and having 7 sheep, I was going to have a ton of wool every single year that I was going to have to figure out something to do with. And it turns out I don't have any problems finding stuff to do with it. I use it everywhere. I mean, a tremendous amount of it goes into the garden, right? Like, just by itself, just tossing it on your soil, it's one of the most amazing sources of mulch that you can put on an annual vegetable garden. It prevents slugs. It prevents disease splashback. It allows aeration to the roots. It breaks down and adds nitrogen and phosphorus back into the soil. It does everything that peat moss does without overly acidifying your soil. It's fully regeneratable. It's amazing stuff. But in addition to just setting it on top of the soil, I wrap pieces of it around the roots of all of my transplanted plants.
Oh, wow.
So if I've got a seedling that is in a tray, instead of just digging a hole and popping it straight into the soil, which those two types of soil are very different. As much as I've tried to make them similar, they're still very different. And there's going to be a lot of transplant shock between going from its little cell out into the soil that I got transplanted in. But if I wrap that little guy in a thin layer of wool before I transplant him, there's absolutely zero transplant shock. Absolutely none whatsoever, because the roots are reaching out from the little cell plug and imbuing themselves into the wool. And the wool acts as a natural pH neutralizer between the two different types of soil. So it makes the soil a lot easier for the new little plants to start digesting stuff. And it protects it
I
from
did not
slugs.
know that.
It's just, the wool is just the most amazing addition ever. And I'm actually, funnily enough, Jen from Sap Tap Farms in Rochester, New York, she recently got sheep, but she is a fiber artist and is a phenomenal knitter. And I have shipped her a lot of my East Frisian's wool, which she has turned into beautiful like scarves and fingerless gloves. And I don't think she made a pair of socks, but she might have. And she's made some fun little crafts and things out of their wool. But she and her husband just got the machinery to start producing wool pellet fertilizer. So pelletized wool, like soil amendments. So they have this amazing machine, and they go around to different farms and they gather up wool that was destined for the landfill, and they pop it into this machine, and it pops these little tiny pellets that you can take one single pellet and drop it into an 8-ounce cup of water, and it pops. Like, do you remember those little like pills that we would buy as kids, and you drop them into the water and they turn into a little dinosaur? Like that's what these little things do. And you can add them to your hanging baskets, to your potted plants, to your garden soil. And it just helps to retain an insane amount of moisture.
Guys, I just wanted to interrupt this real quick to give a shout out to our sponsor, the North American Dairy Sheep Association. NADSA is open to any sheep breed or cross used for milking. NADSA supports dairy shepherds and is elevating dairy standards in sheep in America. You can become a member by going to www.northamericadairysheep.org, or you can email the association at northamericadairysheep@gmail.com. I am so thankful to NADSA for sponsoring this podcast and helping me bring more resources to the dairy sheep community. Stay tuned for future podcast episodes where I talk to NADSA board members and the president about what NADSA is trying to accomplish in America for the dairy sheep community.
Wool is naturally insulating. So it insulates your plants against frost damage. If there's a snap frost, the wool holds on to the heat of the soil and helps to deliver that heat up to the plants. God, what else can I talk about wool? It's just, it's just such an incredible.
It's such an underutilized, misunderstood farm commodity
resource.
And I mean, I understand why so many people are like, I want to milk Katahdins. Like, where are the hair dairy sheep? And I want to, It's like, do you have a garden at the very least on your farm or homestead? Because if you would get a wool breed and just get some kitchen shears, if it's a dairy sheep, they're already trained to the stanchion. Just take some time, snip slow.
It's not that hard. They don't have to. You're just giving your dog a haircut. Like, that's all it really is. And believe me, I was trying to hand shear for the first time this year, and I was so intimidated. I thought for sure I was going to like chop a chunk of my sheep's like haunches off, and I was going to kill my sheep. I was going to bleed her out. And so it was an intimidating process for sure. But after the first one, it became so much easier. And it's a really nice bonding time. And it does give you an insane resource. And I did start going off on a tangent about the garden, and that's really all I talked about. But I mean, you can very easily card your wool and turn it into a dryer ball. I am planning on this year doing a whole line of felted soaps, where I'm actually imbuing the soap with wool. So as you're washing with it, it's almost like an exfoliation as well.
Oh, wow.
And so like there's so many things you can do with it. You can use it as insulation. We're actually taking all of our wool that doesn't have vegetable material in it, but isn't quite good enough for spinning, and we're just bagging it. And in all of our walls, especially the interior walls, or anywhere that doesn't have a lot of insulation, we're just shoving replacing the vermiculite that was in there. Jesus, the 60s. Replacing all of that wool. And so there's so incredibly much that can be done with this product. Like just wool alone is enough to get a sheep.
Yes, I thoroughly agree. Honestly, that's what got me kind of interested in sheep in the first place was, I wanted to grow my own balls of yarn because it would be cheaper. Wink, wink, wink.
It's never cheaper.
It's never cheaper. It's more dependable.
It's never cheaper. It's worth it.
Yeah, it's worth it. You have more say in the final product, but I don't think financially it is ever cheaper to do it to do it yourself.
No.
Food and livestock, but it's definitely worth it. So anyway, yeah, well,
for sure. Like, we're looking at dollars and cents, which you just can't do in the homestead world. Like people that try to do that are like, oh, look how much cheaper it is for me to do this. No, Brenda, it's not in any way. I can promise you that. Like if you don't even think about the amount of invested time into the thing that you're doing, like you don't even include that into the agenda. No, it's much more expensive.
Right.
But you're right. It's so much more worth it.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we got so removed from our food, right? Is because post World War II, the powers that be said, we're going to deliver you the convenience and the time saving and, we're going to make it fast.
Cheap and
convenient.
Right.
And now we have a whole generation whose main complaint is how bored they are. And it's like, well, if you get off your device and go outside and plant a tomato plant that you've wrapped in wool and you milk a sheep and you drink its milk, anyway, I could go on a whole soapbox. Your life will be better if you put down your device.
The simpleness of it, and yes, you'll never be bored again. I can promise you that. As a homesteader, you will never once ever utter the words, I am bored. And that in and of itself is a tremendous amount of money and entertainment and going out and spending money on things that you just don't need. Like, I can't imagine just going around and like wandering around Target and looking at things that I'm going to buy. That's just not something we do. I'd rather, I now have things that I need to be doing out in the garden.
Right.
And with the sheep or wherever. And it's just, you're never bored. It's such a fulfilling cycle. Like to be able to take the wool from the sheep and wrap it around like a corn seedling transplant, and then to put that into the soil and then to use the manure to fertilize that plant. And that plant grows and is the most healthy, disease and pest resistant plant, because plants have immune systems. The disease and pest resistance isn't just on the pest. So you grow this beautiful plant, it nourishes us. We pick the corn off of it. It feeds our bodies in the healthiest way possible. And then the rest of that plant gets fed back to the sheep to create more wool and more fertilizer. And to create milk that we can then help to balance out the nourishment that's lacking from just the corn. Like, there's just no better feeling. There's just no better feeling than closing that loop.
I was combing some wool yesterday with some wool combs, not carders, and it's been so cold outside. Like, we all have cabin fever, and there's vegetable matter falling out from this wool onto the floor. My toddler's running around picking up bits of fluff and trying to eat it and stuff like that. And, at first I was feeling a little bit irritated just because there was just too much going on, right? And then all of a sudden I just stopped and I'm like, I am living in a Lori Pemberton art piece right now, right? I mean, the dog and the baby are stuffing wool bits up their nose. I'm combing it. I'm going to turn it into a sweater for my husband. It's snowy outside. Like,
it's all about perspective, isn't it? Yeah. Like, it's all about perspective. Like, you're literally living in, a Beatrix Potter novel, and we just have to stop and remind ourselves of that.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, my husband will look at me sometimes and he's like, you remember when we used to be bored? Like, we used to look up what movies
Mhm.
were playing in the theater because we didn't know what else to do with our weekend. And now people are like, oh, hey, did
Yeah.
you know there's this, again, like we have 4 TV series we watch per year: Outlander, The Chosen, All Creatures Great and Small, and I think Men in Kilts are the other one because we are mildly obsessed. And like, if it's not in that bracket, we don't watch it just because we don't have time. And we're like, we're 3 seasons
Yeah.
behind right now because we just haven't had time. And it's the best feeling in the whole world to go, I don't have time to go to the movie theater. I don't have time to go do this. And when you're first getting into this lifestyle, you might have kind of a grieving process of, oh, I don't have time to go do the normal 21st century thing. But then you realize after a while, the 21st century thing is what's killing us. Like, just sitting in front of
Yeah,
screens because we don't
exactly.
have our own life to live is where we're getting a lot of these issues. If you're, you know, if you're so busy
But like, we
thinking,
also don't really miss out on those experiences either because of the lifestyle we lead. Like, that was a lot more. My husband had a much harder time. He was a city mouse, grew up in the suburbs of Philadelphia and like in New Jersey. And like, I mean, the front yard grass was nature, like that was what he grew up in.
Yeah.
And I grew up on a farm. And so I'm used to this kind of lifestyle and used to like our moms saying, no, we're not going to go to the movies because it's an hour and 15 minutes away and we have TV right here, So like when we were first kind of like getting more and more enmeshed into the homesteading lifestyle, my husband was going through this like grieving process of like, man, remember when we used to have like time to just like go out for, the movie, go to a movie and then go shopping afterwards and, like walk around and just like people watch and get ice cream and like, those were fun. And we still do. Like, that sounds horrible. Like, we never leave the homestead. This is not true. We still go out on dates very much. So yeah, like when I would ask him, I was like, well, what is it that you're missing? Right? Like, what is it that you're missing about not being able to go to the movies? And he's like, well, like, it's dark and it's quiet and the screen's just like really big right there. And the popcorn is so salty and buttery. And I'm like, well, we have an awesome TV because my husband is a tech guy. He's a total tech guy. He's a software engineer, very enmeshed in the technology world. I am not. But we have a nice TV and it's not big. It's a very small lattice TV, but we live in a tiny house. I'm like, you know what? We can turn the lights down and we can scooch the couch a little bit closer to the TV and I will make the butteriest, saltiest popcorn you've ever tasted in your entire life. And it'll be fresh baked cookies and we can put all of it in our underpants. And he's like, oh, yeah. He's like,
I love that so much.
He's like, this is way better. So it's just all about that perspective shift, like, are you missing out or are you just allowing yourself the opportunity for so much more meaningful times and connection?
Exactly. I love that. I think that's the perfect note to end all this on. Vicki, where can people find more about you and your farm and your sheep and your wonderful CSA?
Instagram is going to be the best place. Again, I'm awful and I have no technology and I'm in the process of creating a website. But for right now, Instagram is the best place to find me. It's at Fat Dragon Farm Apothecary. That is the farm's Instagram where I post all of the products and the CSA information and the things that we're doing there. And then my personal account is the one where I am just always posting pictures of the garden and the sheep every single day and all the homesteading things that are outside of the business. And that one is v.o.2.max. v.o.2.max. And that's really where you can easily get a hold of me if you have questions or DMs. And I love engaging with people. I love chatting on Instagram. If you have a question about anything I'm doing or anything that we talked about today, for sure, send me a DM. If you're interested in a CSA, we've also got an Etsy shop, and that's Fat Dragon Farm on Etsy. And you can check out all of our products out there.
And you have a YouTube that you're slowly dusting off too, right?
I forgot about the YouTube. all of this tech that I'm trying to keep up with. Yes, I do have a YouTube channel that is a burgeoning YouTube channel. We've only got 4 videos up right now, but I am posting more every single week there. So
Okay,
yes,
and
that is another great
what
place
is
to
your
be.
handle on what is your handle on YouTube? Is it your name?
Oh, my
Vicki
handle
Altman?
there is Vicki Altman. My full name, Vicki Altman.
All right, and I'll put
Yeah.
all these in the show notes
I'm
for those.
one of those clever people that has branded across the board. Like, find us here on all platforms. Like,
I
it would
know.
be helpful for sure from a marketing standpoint. But again, like our conversation, I'm not trying to make a business here. I just want to pay my bills and eat good food.
Exactly. I know. I wrote the whole book and it went to print and then it hit me like a ton of bricks. I never said our farm name once in the entire book. So when I went to start
Are you
speaking,
serious?
yeah, everyone's like, "Who's Whoopsie Daisy Farm?" And I'm like, "The person who wrote the book, it's me." And they're like, "No, that's Rachel's somebody." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" Like,
I never even made that connection. And that's why I created my YouTube channel with my name when I was like watching some videos on like how to start off in, the entrepreneur online world. And it was like, make everything your name, that way in case you ever rebrand yourself, you don't have to start back over again. It's just you. I was like, oh, that's a pretty good idea. But now I'm just like, oh, it's just Vicki Altman. That's all I am. I'm not like some cute farm name.
that's okay. The people who really like make us splash, they don't follow the rules anyway, right? So it's all good.
Right.
This is
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me on, Rachel. This was just wonderful. I could chat with you all day about this.
Thanks so much for listening to the Woolly Way podcast. We hope you enjoyed our episode and have gleaned at least one tip you can implement in your flock right away. If you liked what you heard, please hit the subscribe button. And if you wouldn't mind, leave us a review. This helps others find our podcast so they can enjoy learning more about dairy sheep along with you. The Woolly Way podcast is a production of Whoopsie Daisy Farm. For updates and information about our show, follow us on Facebook or Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube and email list, and look us up at whoopsiedaisyfarm.com. Have a particular guest you'd like us to host or a topic you'd like us to cover? Fill out our contact form on our website or shoot us an email at whoopsiedaisyfarm@gmail.com. See you next time!